Hey everybody, welcome to my channel, Watch Lookout. I am continuing my series, what is the state of the collection, and today I'm experimenting with the lights off, but I may turn them on. Just use natural sunlight. Today we're going to talk about the two watches in front of you now, which are the Seestern, as it's pronounced in German, even though they're made in China. These watches I thought were great, and they are great. This watch here is called the Sub 300T. This is the watch that got me into purchasing homage watches. This is the very first homage watch that I ever purchased. Prior to that, I had probably a disparaging view of homage watches. But when I encountered this, I had to admit that it was a really nice looking watch, and it appeared to be a really well built watch from reviews that I had seen and my own investigating. So I purchased it. I think I was drawn to the black mother of pearl dial. I thought that was a nice difference from the original that it homages, which is the Doxa 300T. The T in 300T simply means professional version. I think the Sub 300 had a raised crystal, but the professional version, the T version, had a flush crystal. So these watches are made by Suges, which is like the parent company of Seestern. I think most Americans and English speakers just call it Seestern, and I know I certainly do. But let's talk about the watch. It is the first watch that I purchased with a cushion case, or maybe you could say a tortoise case. I really didn't like cases of this design or shape at all, and so aside from the fact that this was the first homage watch that I bought, it was also the first watch I bought with a case shaped like this. And I really love the watch. So one thing you notice about watch collecting is that over time, you probably expand your tastes. I think my watch collection could best be described as tool watch. I seem to be a fan of dive watches, tool watches, watches made of stainless steel. And this watch was all of those things, but it had a little more flair, a little more beauty. I wasn't keen to have bracelets such as this, the Beads of Rice bracelet, but the execution is really so good that I just couldn't help myself. I'm really impressed with this watch. I bought it for $199. My motivation for buying this watch was because Turkey, the country where I live, had recently imposed a month or so before I bought this. I bought this the last day of June 2022, so I've had it for a year and a half, 18 months. Just a month prior to that, in May, they imposed a new law which limited import purchases to $150. Now I say I bought this for $199 plus the $40 shipping and handling. When this watch arrived in customs, they did not want to clear it because of the price. But the verbiage in the law had a lot of vagary in it, and it seemed to imply that you could import items greater than $150. I had seen it in print, and so I argued my case. I did not receive this watch until the first week of September, so there was quite a lot of time between when I ordered it and when I finally received it. And I had to go to the customs and argue my case, and they were firm in not letting me have the watch, and then they just sort of acquiesced at the last moment. I was very kind and courteous with the agent, and he was very stubborn. But when he said I wasn't going to have it and they were about ready to close up for the day, I thanked him for his time, and that seemed to flip a switch in him. and he allowed me to have it. This is a 42 millimeter case diameter, not including the crown. It's a 13 millimeter case height, and it is a very friendly 20 millimeter case, lug width. I did not get the lug-to-lug dimensions. That's my fault. I'm just realizing that for both of the Seesterns here that I didn't get that measurement. And it weighs in at 172 grams with all of the links on. I think I probably removed 2, perhaps. It does have a signed with the logo and the name. Stamped upper and a milled lower that has just a friction fit clasp. It's really nice quality. Each of these are independently articulated beads in the bracelet itself. The bracelet feels substantial and exactly what you would expect from a quality watch. And here on the back, something I really like, a really nice touch. This is the their impression or version of the, excuse me, I'm a little bit ill, so I hope I don't cough too much. This is the Great Wave off Kanagawa. This is basically their interpretation of the 1831 wood block print made by the Japanese artist, what was his name? Hokusai. 1831. Anyway, so their little interpretation has that starfish or ʻzeːʃtɛrn jumping into the water. And you can just make out there in the back, I don't know if I can get this to focus. In the actual wood print, Mount Fuji is visible in the background behind the wave. And in fact, I just can't get it to focus. Right behind the starfish jumping in to take a dip, you can just barely make out Mount Fuji there before the back of the case takes over. It does have a sapphire crystal. It does have what appears to be a BGW9 lume, which we'll look at later. The date wheel itself is also loomed. That is a really cool feature. The bezel has this different, it's not just a flat bezel, you can see there. It does rise just above the crystal, so the bezel serves to protect the crystal. And, obviously the bezel is a cool touch, which ʻzeːʃtɛrn can take no credit for. There is lume here on the bezel pip. Basically, your orange numbers reference feet, and your black numerals on the inside of the bezel reference minutes. And so what are they telling us? Well, they're telling us how many minutes you can be at that depth, an average diver, how many minutes you can be at that depth before you would have to decompress to resurface, right? So as long as you stay within the time there, broadly, generally, as long as you stay within that time at that depth, you see here it says 70 feet, you can stay down approximately 50 minutes. And anything beyond 50 minutes, you would have to decompress so that the gas bubbles, helium likely, or any others, didn't expand in your bloodstream and cause an aneurysm or something of the nature. Yeah, I really like this watch. I think it's a really beautiful watch. One detail you'll notice here, if I can just get it to focus, is that when I pulled it out of the package, when I did my original unboxing video, I could see the scratch in the video, but I didn't notice it until after I stopped filming the video. And right there, there is this scratch. I don't know if it happened that it passed QC or QC overlooked it when it left the factory, or if it happened when the customs officials opened up and inspected the watch. Either possibility is likely. The watch was wrapped in plastic when I unboxed it. So it seems unlikely the customs officials could have damaged it, but it's there. It's something that would be unacceptable for a higher price point watch, but this is just a little story in and of itself. Got the little starfish there on the crown. Really nice touch because it has some pretty good detail. We can get this to focus. The high polished flanks are really nice, and that radial brush satin finishing on the top of the case is a really cool touch. Really, the whole execution is really good. I also like the fact that the bezel itself is not polished at all. It almost looks anodized. Of course, the top is polished, but it's not a high polish. It's just sort of a brush finishing. But it has a lot of character, this watch, and it has a lot of weight and substance, and I really do love it. I think they did just a bang-up job. This is the version 3, which at least one of the noticeable differences is that the hour hand in this watch is slightly longer and more pronounced than in the version 2. I guess people complain that the version 2 hour hand was just a bit too small. And as these companies are known to do, they respond to customer complaints, release another version, and they solve whatever that deficiency was. So yeah, it's a really, really nice watch. And, a watch that I added to my collection because I had to buy lesser expensive watches, but I didn't want to sacrifice quality of materials. And I realized that every watch that I collect has some little idiosyncrasy or some little difference to it. And I don't exactly have a list of things, but when I see something, I realize this is probably something I want to add to the collection. And this is an example of that here, this Sub 600T. Now, I ordered this on the last day of August in 2022, so even before I received the Sub 300, I had already decided I was going to buy another watch. And this watch is the only watch that I had at the time that had a sunburst dial. And again, that is not something that the Doxa features itself. This watch is really great because it is a contrast to the 70s styling of this Sub 300T. And this Sub 600T represents a time when Doxa had, I think, new ownership and a new principal designer who wanted to make a departure from what Doxa watches had been looking like. And so in the early 80s, they came out with this Sub 600T. This is the first watch that I purchased with the crown at the 4 o'clock position. And I always hated these crowns at the 4 o'clock position. In my watch journalism days, I interviewed many managing directors of watch companies, generally Swiss watch companies. And I can't remember if it was Jean-Claude Biver or if it was, I think maybe the CEO of Parallel at the time. For some reason, I think it's one of those two gentlemen. Anyway, they were saying that you see these watches with a crown at the 4 o'clock position, and they said that tells you that they don't know how to make watch movements. And I thought that was a very interesting thing that I never forgot. And so, as I really didn't like asymmetric watch design, I sort of latched on to that statement, and I sort of believed it. I don't think that's true at all. Because these are both using the same movement. So clearly, position of the crown is not hindered or bound by the design of the movement. These are both Seiko NH35 movements. But again, that's a statement that always stuck with me. I really like this watch because it is angular where the Sub 300 is very curvy. I like that this bracelet is 3 links. That's generally what I favor, but I also like that it's quite angular and almost has an integrated bracelet feel to it, even though it does detach. I really like how subdued and subtle that crown is. Like if you're going to get me to buy a watch with a crown at the 4 o'clock position, you have to get me something that does this recess action here. You see, so that's actually the crown. And it's still not out. You still have to pull it out in order to adjust the time, to wind it, and to adjust the date. So this was genius. And that is what made me warm to the idea that I would go ahead and get this. I also like the contrast that this had the black ceramic bezel insert. I feel like as a two-piece, these are just great. They complement each other. Obviously, the styling does complement each other. The orange and the black and the white, they're all very complementary. I really, really love both watches. This case diameter is at 40 millimeters, and I believe it's a 13.5 or a 13.7. Yeah, 13.5 case height. It also features 20 millimeter lug width, and as I apologize, I don't know what the lug to lug is, but we'll put it on my wrist and we'll see what it looks like, both of them. This also, according to what I saw, weighed at 172 grams. I think that's interesting that they both have the same weight. Quick wristwatch check. I am wearing today my Aragon Dive Master Evo, a really good watch. You see also with a crown at the 4 o'clock position. And in this case, I think it's a great, great design feature because as I have 3 Aragons now, 2 of them being big boys. This is 48 millimeter case, but the bezel sticks out 2 millimeters in total, so it looks like a 50 millimeter. Having this crown at the 4 o'clock position saves the back of my hand, because when you have a really big case, it's going to dig into the back of your hand, particularly if you wear long sleeves or anything of the nature. And again, this Seestern Sub 600T also features, excuse me, the same artwork on the back of the watch as the Sub 300T. We'll look at it here. So obviously the lug to lug is pretty favorable for this 42 millimeter case diameter. I have a 7.5 inch wrist, and I think it fits really, really well. I have it a little bit loose, but not that loose. It doesn't really move around all that much. I do experience a lot of wrist swell, so I found myself recently going back through and adding a link to some of my watch bracelets. I don't think I did it with that one, but I can't remember. It would have been a long time ago I did. Now, this clasp is the same as the other, but for the fact it has the twin push-button release. So that's a slightly different feature. And again, we have the Great Wave off Kanagawa. And we can't really see Mount Fuji in the background, but it's just barely there, peeking in. This also has a loomed date wheel and a loom there on that triangular pip on the bezel, and we're gonna take them into our Justin Hawkins vocal booth here shortly and see what the loom looks like. Really two really comfortable watches. I tend to start my day with whatever watch it is that I'm going to wear, and then I base my wardrobe around it. So if I do buy a watch that has like orange on it, which I have a number of those watches now, well then I go out and buy ties or something to sort of accent and complement the watch that I'm wearing. It all starts with the watch and then it goes from there. I never think what outfit I'm going to wear first. I always think what watch am I going to wear today? And then the outfit sort of, develops from there. Really handsome watch. You can see the bezel does not stick up as high as it does on the Sub 300T, but yet the case height is recorded to be 0.5 millimeter more than the Sub 300. So that's an interesting little take. I guess what I'll do, we'll take our walk into the Justin Hawkins vocal booth. Vocal booth. Whoops, should have kept that light off. All right. Hope I don't get a copyright strike for that. I did change the words. Oh, I guess I'd have to have permission to do that based on music publishing. All right, so let's get some light on the subject here. All right. So first, I'll charge the Sub 300. Should probably get that in the shot there. Has a really nice blue lume. It's very well done. Obviously the markers of both of these watches are painted on and not applied. Doesn't bother me in the least. So this is our look at the lume on the Sub 300. It's got these square indices, and you can see the date there, proclaiming its glory. Really, really nice. Now, really I ought to do a side-by-side. So just give me a moment here, because I did put the Sub 600 on my wrist, and now I gotta put a little change. Yes, that is the drain of my sink. All right, now charging up the Sub 600. Yeah, you know, when you buy these watches, something might speak to you and you buy it on impulse. Sometimes you sit and contemplate. Ultimately, I find that I'm buying watches that are similar but yet have some unique differential that enhances my collection. The beautiful thing about buying these inexpensive watches, you know, this was the gateway. These watches were the gateway, accepting the reality that I might have to visit AliExpress and see if I could find watches that I could buy there. And now a majority of my watches have been purchased probably through AliExpress. And you know, the beauty is when you have more watches in your collection, it has the effect of, obviously expanding your collection, but it means that you wear each watch less. So you're able to preserve its condition longer. Now this is brighter. This is brighter than the Sub 300. I'm going to charge them both a little bit more. Then I'm going to cut the lights so that we can do a side-by-side. I don't think it's really fair to do a comparison in terms of the quality of lume. It seems the Sub 600 looks a little bit more like it might have been a different formula of lume, but one thing's for sure, the indices on the Sub 600 are larger, and so if for no other reason, if it is the same formula, that would be the reason why it appears brighter. But here in the video, they both look about the same, but it is true that the top watch is the Sub 300, and in real life it is slightly dimmer, but as said, it could be just the size of the indices. And they're both really spectacular watches for the price point. You know, the materials used, the execution, the reliable accuracy of both watches, I really don't complain at all. I don't wear these watches all that much because I have so many. But I did wear each of these within the last week or two. Just sort of dug them out of the box and put them on. But they are really nice, honest watches for the price. And that is, that is truly an accomplishment of Chinese manufacturing, and why I think that You know, Chinese brands are probably going to unseat the Swiss market. That seems like a bold statement to say, but it's not a misinformed statement. If history is any indicator, more than 100 years ago, England was the king of watchmaking, and Switzerland set about dethroning England. And with tax incentives and bonds to help build factories, they managed to lure Hans Wilsdorf and his young Rolex company, along with many other English builders, to relocate to Switzerland, and the rest was history. Now here we are 100 years later, and I think the Chinese are giving the Swiss a run for their money, because I think they're selling more units, and because I think that with the material access and the access to the machines and the dedication and the increasing savoir-faire of their labor force, yeah, Switzerland is in trouble. Guys, thanks for coming out and watching this State of the Collection review of my Seestern Sub 300T and Sub 600T. I hope you like the channel. I do it in one take. I am stubborn that way. But please like, share, and subscribe. Cheers, everybody.